Zion Amud Beis, that's 27b. Where will we start from? Rav Ashi Amar. Start from Rav Ashi Amar. That's like right in the middle of the page, in the middle of the line and middle of the page. The line starts Nami in an old Gemara. We thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. In this class of our learning, we should have the Beis Hamikdash immediately. We mentioned in the Mishnah that if there is a town, there was a siege on the town, so all the wives of Kayanim in that town would be prohibited to their husbands, unless there was a witness that could testify that they were pure. Now, who could be those witnesses? So he said that could be even a slave or a servant. Problem is, the Gemara mentioned that a person's own slave or maidservant cannot be considered an extra person when it comes to yichud with the husband. So for the example was that someone that had written his wife a get, and there was a condition on the get, that if he passes away, then the get should be valid. And if he survives, then he doesn't need the get. But he wanted to protect his wife from having to wait for the yibam or chalitza. So he written this get. After the get is written, and he gives it to her on condition, he's not allowed to be misyachad with her. He's not allowed to be alone with her. So he said that unless there's witnesses there. Now, who could be a witness? Anyone, except for her own maidservant. See, her own maidservant can't testify. And here we said that her own maidservant can testify. So Rav Papi said, well, we're more lenient when it comes to a shvuya, a captive woman. Rav Papa says that there's a difference between her witness, her maidservant or his maidservant. Her maidservant can't testify. His maidservant can testify. Then Rav Ashi comes along. Rav Ashi answers like this: Rav Ashi Amar Hava B'Shifcha Dida. We're talking about her maidservant. B'Shifcha Mechsa Chazi V'Shaska, and we know what happens. The maidservant sees everything that her mistress is doing, and she doesn't say anything. She's the servant. Now, when she doesn't say anything, what is she doing? She's saying that I was together with her the whole time. That's all she's going to say. She's not going to say what they did. Well, Hasam Dipishtikasa Matirta. She doesn't need to say what they did or they didn't do. All she needs to say is that there was no yichud, that she was there together with this woman the whole time. That's all she needs to say, that there was no yichud. Now, if that's the case, that all she needs to say is that she was there, then lay mehemna, then we don't believe her. Why? Because if something would have happened, if they would have been together, she wouldn't have testified about that. She's just not going to say anything. All she's saying is that nothing happened. I was there the whole time. But if something would have happened, then we don't know what she would have said. So therefore, we don't believe her when she says she was there the whole time and nothing happened. However, the next case, when it comes to the city that had a siege in it, unless she testifies that her mistress is pure, then the mistress is going to be prohibited. If that's the case, then mehemna, then she has to give a full testimony about that. The Gemara asks, how do you know that she's going to give a full testimony? Maybe she's going to lie. The Gemara says, Tarti layafta. She's not going to do two things. She's not going to be silent about what happened, plus lie that she was pure. In other words, by the husband, after the get was given, she just says she was there the whole time, and if she doesn't say anything, then everything is fine. She doesn't say that anything happened. In other words, she would need to testify that something happened to create a problem. Over here, she has to testify that nothing happened to fix the problem. So when it comes to testifying that something happened to create the problem, we say she's not going to say anything, and therefore she's just going to be silent. And then that would have resolved all the issues. The problem is that we know that this is what she's going to do, so we can't resolve the issue with just a maidservant staying silent. But over there by the siege, she can't just remain silent. She has to actually go ahead and testify that she's pure. So for that, we're going to trust. The Gemara says, but maybe she's going to lie about that. No, she's not going to go ahead and lie. She would maybe stay silent, but to do two things is not to say what happened. Plus, in addition, say that nothing happened. That she's not going to do. Okay, Kihad Mari Barisik, the Gemara gives another example of this. It was a person, Mari Barisik, there's a Gemara in, I think, a Mafkid. What happened was, Isaac, was the father, had gone to Beit Chuzai, and he went with his son. He left the rest of the family at home. Anyway, he ended up, Chuzai is a place, Beit Chuzai. Oh, really? So he comes back. The father passed away, but the son comes back and he finds his brothers, and he says he wants the inheritance. So he says like this: Amalei plaguely benechsidabi. He says, give me part of the split the inheritance with me. Amalei layadanalach. They say, I don't know who you are. Yeah, they haven't seen him in years. They don't know who this person is. Asla kami de Rav Chizda. So they come to Rav Chizda. Amalei shapi karmelach. They're right. The brothers didn't recognize Yosef. It happens sometimes that the brothers don't recognize. Why? He left when he didn't have a beard. He comes back with a beard. They don't recognize him. They tell him, bring witnesses that you're actually the brother. He says, I have witnesses. But they're afraid of Mari Barisik because the Gavra Alimahu, the Gavra Almahu, he's a strong man. He's a gangster, or maybe he's he's a big gvir and a big supporter in the community. No one wants to mess with him. Amalei Lididei. So they say to Mari Barisik, Zil, it's supposed to be Zilat, I think. What does it say? What's the Aleph? Zil Isi At. You bring witnesses that he's not your brother. Amalei Dinahachi. He says, is that the rule? I have all the possessions here. He wants to extract money from me. He's the one. The onus is on him to bring the proof, not on me that he's not. Amalei Hachi Daninalach Lakuli Alme Chavrach. That's how I judge for you and for all your tough guys, your friends. That's the rule that we're going to make. That the onus is on them to bring the proof, because no one wants to stand up in court against them.
They're going to bring these violent guys in court.
Yeah, to bring witnesses, but the court is going to, of course, interrogate. So Hashtanami Yasim Shakri. 1 second. If that's the case, maybe. Look, the witnesses don't want to show up because they're afraid to start up with him. But maybe that means that they're going to come, they're afraid of him, they're going to come and they're going to testify falsely if they're afraid of him. The Gemara says, Tarti layavti, they don't do two things wrong. If they're not going to come and testify, that's one thing. But to testify falsely, that's two things. That's not just testifying, that's also saying something that wouldn't be accurate. So that they're not going to do. So that was what the proof that we said over here is that this maidservant isn't going to go ahead and say that she's innocent if she really wasn't. But that doesn't mean that she's going to say that something happened if something happened, right? She remained silent, possibly. Okay. Now we have Lema Ketanai. Let's say that this discussion between Rav Papi and Rav Papa and Rav Ashi, if the maidservant is trusted, if her maidservant is trusted, so let's say that this is the Machlekes Tanaim. Goes like this. Zu Edus, this testimony about a captive, about a woman that's a captive. So we need someone to testify that the woman is pure. She wasn't defiled. Who can give that testimony? So the Brisa says, Ish, a man can give that testimony. Isha could be another woman. Tinika could be a child. Tinikas could be a young girl. Avia could be the father of the girl. Ve'ima could be the mother. V'achia could be the brother. V'achesa could be the sister. Avaloi beno bita, but it can't be the own son and daughter of the woman. Lei avda v'shivchasa, and it also can't be the maidservant. Okay. V'tanya idach. We have another brisa that says, "Hakol nemanim lo chutz mehem no baila." Everyone can testify, except for herself and her husband. Those are the two people that are nageya, that are biased. They can't testify about it.
In the first group, they didn't have the husband at all.
Right. It's interesting. Well, the Gemara says like this: the Rav Papi with the Rav Ashi Tanayi. You see, we mentioned over here that Loi Avda v'Shivchasa, not her and her maidservant, not her slave and not her maidservant can testify. Then we had another brisa that says it's only herself that can't testify and her husband. Sounds like the maidservant can. So according to Rav Papi and Rav Ashi, they don't make any differences. They usually hold that a maidservant can, yes, testify. Right? There's leniencies that are given because of a shvuya, or that she won't say a lie. She won't actually lie. Maybe she won't say everything, but in the case of a shvuya where she has to testify, she's not going to actually lie. So we should believe her. So therefore, the brisa that says that we don't believe her, that's arguing on the other brisa. Right? In other words, they cannot get along. They cannot. Those two brises can't agree. However, the Rav Papa Milema Tanahi, but according to Rav Papa, that says that by a shifcha also you don't believe her. And how did we answer the Mishnah if we don't believe the shifcha? When it says in the Mishnah that the only person that can't testify is herself, we answered that meant that her shifcha is like herself, also can testify. How are we going to resolve it over here? Amalach Rav Papa would say, Ki Tanya hi b'masicha levituma. When do we say that we trust her? We trust the maidservant. That's when she's mesicha levituma. That's when she's speaking without recognizing that there's going to be a consequence of what she's saying. It's not like testifying in court, just saying it as a story. That's when we say everyone is trusted. Yeah. When she's not, she doesn't realize that she's testifying, then we can trust her. When Rav Dimi came, Rav Chanan Kartigna. Rav Chanan Kartigna said, Rav Dimi said that Rav Chanan Bartigna, Mishtoi, said over. There's a story that came to Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Levi Mishtoi. Some say that Rabbi Shua ben Levi said this. Rabbi. That there was a story that came before Rabbi. Levi, Rabbi Shua ben Levi's father, was a student of Rabbi. So he says like this: person says, just as a story, I and my mother, we were captured by non-Jews. And I went out to draw some water. My mind was on my mother. I went to get some wood to heat the water, probably, or to warm the house. That was, my mind was on my mother. And Rebbe actually trusted this boy, even though the child normally is not believed. But because it was Mesiach Pituma, Rebbe believed. Mesiach Pituma, Rebbe believed him. There's a little bit of an issue here. Because that's the next Mishnah. Yeah. You'll see. what's the issue over here? We have two brises. We're trying to say that it's not a machlekes. One was Mesiach Vitum and one wasn't. Oh, so the brisa that said Hakol Ne'emanim Lahayed, everyone is trusted except for herself and her husband. That's talking about when the Mesiach Vitum. When would they not be trusted? The son and the son and the daughter and the maid and the maid the maid and the maidservant. That's when they're testifying. That's when they're not trusted. Okay, so it's gonna fit.
So whenever phrase pursuit, does that mean casual conversation outside of basically?
I think so. Right.
So casual stuff is believable, but the court stuff is not.
Right.
It could be lying in court, but
Right.
talk is.
Right. And even though when it comes to other things, we say that what a person says out of court is not accurate.
It could be
Right.
deep story.
That's when it comes to his claims. He has certain claims relevant to himself. He doesn't reveal outside of court. That we doesn't say his defense outside of court. That's the another Gemara. Okay. Amar Reb Zechariah ben Akatzav. Reb Zechariah ben Akatzav said, "Hamayin azeh." Mayin means an abode.
Swear.
What is it?
So, I swear by this whole house.
Yeah.
Oh,
But yeah, so it means that he's swearing by the Beis Hamikdash.
oh,
Yeah. Leizazi yada mitach yadi. Shashinich to come to Yerushalayim ad sheyatzu. Says the non-Jews came into Yerushalayim. This probably was around the time of the destruction. Says, but my wife's hand was in my hand the whole time. Notice the Goyim never violated her until they left. Amalai ain't other made a we say it's nevertheless you're a Kayan and you can't testify about yourself. So he had to separate from his wife. Well, now we have a brisa that says Tana. The brisa teaches Afal Piken Yichtalei Bayis Bechatzerei. Nevertheless, he got her a house in the courtyard, so that he would be able to take care of her, I guess, and maybe take help with the children. There's a Kohen. And when she would leave, she would leave in front of the children. When she would come in, she would come in after the children. She should never be alone together with her husband. Baya has a question. Can you do this with a divorcee? Someone divorces his wife. Can he have her live in the same courtyard? See here, this was just a shvuya. We don't really know if anything really happened there. There's a chumrah that we have because he's a kohen, can't live together with her. He's even saying that nothing happened, but he's not believed. So they're allowed to live in the same courtyard. But what about a grusha once they're divorced? Now, is it talking about a grusha that's a kohen? Rashi says, yeah, it's a kohen that divorced his wife. Otherwise, if it was someone else, it wouldn't be so serious because he would be allowed to marry her back, right? So, Hasam over there, the Bishvuya Hikilo, we're more lenient because it's a case of captives, Aval Hachaloi, but not by a Grusha. Maybe there's no difference. Maybe they're allowed to be in the same courtyard. Tashema, so come and listen. The Tanya was taught in the Brisa, Magar Sisish, the Leitinasi Bishkunasi. Someone divorces his wife, she should not get married, she should not get remarried and live in the same courtyard as her ex. V'im haya kayan, and if he is a kayan,
I mean, this seems rather harsh. Like both she and her husband can testify that she was not defiled.
right?
So one can corroborate them.
Well, they have to find someone else to testify.
So the burden's on them.
Yeah,
It just because Gentiles entered the city and they took over the city, they assumed that.
yeah. It also means that there was no place for them to hide, because if there was a place for them to hide, then they wouldn't be pure anyway. Now, if he divorces his wife and he's a kohen, so v'imay a kohen leitadar imay b'mavai, then he shouldn't even live in the same alleyway. Now the shchuna, according to some commentators, would be 3 houses, and the alleyway is several courtyards. So in the alleyway, so that's even a larger area. V'imay a kfar katan, but if it's a little tiny village, so zehaya ma'aser kfar katan neither keshchuna. A little tiny village is considered like the 3 houses, like a small complex, and so they shouldn't be in the same little village.
So if they weren't a Kohen, this wouldn't be a problem.
Right. Now the Gemara asks, "Mi nidcha mipnei mi?" Who has to move? Yeah, this is going to be a big discussion.
Like for divorce laws,
Right. So Tashima, the Tanya, he nidches mipanav. She has to move. Veinu nidcha mipanav. He does not have to move. V'ma yachatzu shala, but let's say she owned the courtyard. So who nidcha mipanav? Then he has to move. Okay. If she owns the courtyard, then he has to move. Ibailu. Let's say it was a partnership. Mao. What's going to be the din? So Tashma. We have a brisa that says that she has to move. Now, what is that talking about? Mayaskina. Ilim b'chatzah shalai. If it's his courtyard, pshita. Of course, she has to move. Ela b'chatzah shalai must be that it's her courtyard. But Tanya machatzah shalai hu nitchus mipanav. But then we said if it's her courtyard, then he has to move. So why are you saying she has to move? Ela lavki agavna must be that it was a partnership. And in the case of a partnership, then she has to move. That brisa that says she has to move, that's referring to a case of a partnership. Otherwise, if it's his courtyard, then it's obvious, and if it's her courtyard, then it's not true. The Gemara says, yeah, we're gonna see soon.
Yeah,
What
we
was I gonna
see
say?
a woman really owning property, I guess, at this time. I wouldn't really think like women would own property so much in this time. You know?
It could be,
I mean, it's likely.
unless there's, what was it?
Barzell,
Right, could be that she inherited from her father or something. Right,
They had no sons.
right.
So,
Dilma the Agermager, maybe it was rented. How do you know that it's a partnership? And maybe when we said that she has to move, that's because she was renting it. Or maybe he was renting it. I don't know what it's asking. Dilma the Agermager, who is renting it? Maybe they're both renting. What does it say in your commentary?
teaching that he rented the courtyard, she is ousted in his favor, goes on. Therefore, the dilemma with
Oh.
regard to the courtyard belongs to both.
It's not resolved.
Unresolved.
Maybe he rented the courtyard and she still has to move. But we don't know if it's partnerships, if she has to move. My Havi Allah, what's the end? What's the conclusion? So Tashma, Pasuk says, Hini Hashem metaltalech tiltalech gever. That Hashem will dislocate you, he'll make you move, the dislocation of a man. Now, V'amarav, and Rav says, Tiltuli the Gavra Kashmi Ditza, that it's more difficult for a man to move than for a woman to move, to relocate. Yeah. I guess it's easier for them to join a new community than it is for a man. Maybe people have more compassion on the woman, and maybe, yeah.
okay. Not a woman, so I don't know. She
A
has to think
single
about how long it
woman
takes
versus a
to-
single man
yeah, think about it.
may be different than if it's a married See, a married woman relies on her husband for the social things a lot, possibly.
Why it's easier. It's easier. When my wife and I moved, I integrated.
Right. Right. But a single woman would be doing all of those things on her own. She would be going to shul. She would be going to the classes. So she would find all those friends. Doesn't have to take care of her husband. She would just, it would be easier for her. I don't know. Okay. Let's say he borrowed money from her. Remember that Yiddish song? There was a Yiddish song. Ich bin a border by mein Vibe. It was this guy that got divorced, but he couldn't find a place to rent. He ended up renting his wife's a room in his wife's house, his ex-wife's house. So anyway, this is it's a problem. I don't remember the song. I just remember it was like a comical. But here he borrows money from her, so he's not supposed to pay her back directly. He's supposed to send a messenger to pay her back. They shouldn't have so much interaction. They're divorced. We're talking about he's a kayan, probably. Otherwise, he can marry her back. And if they come to court, we don't even pay attention to them. Why not? Why not? Maybe they don't want to have too much interaction. What does it say over there? Does it say? So, but what about the money?
Divorce her, she paid only by means of another person, not directly from her husband, them from engaging in business.
And let's say they come to court, the next case. Yeah.
If after engaging in business dealings, it came before us for judgment, we do not attend to them because
They shouldn't have.
engaging in those dealings, they were in violation of the transgression.
Okay. Rav Papa Meshemuti Meshamtinanu. We actually put them in Cherem. And the husband and wife, the ex. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua, Menagudi Nami Menagdinanu. Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua says that they give them Malchus. Amrav Nachman Tana Bevel Rabasi was taught in Evel Rabasi, which that's a brisa. Rashi says it's a Masechta, which is called Masechta Smachis. It's in the back of the Gemara Avodah Zarah. It's printed there. It's one of the Masechta Ketanas. Evel Rabasi. Smachis. Masechta Smachis. Yeah. So over there, Reb Nachman says that there's a brisa in Evel Rabasi and Smachis Bamedavar Mumshin Eskarshim and Nesuin. When do we have this issue? That's only if they were married fully. The marriage was consummated. Aval Kashin Eskarshim and Erusin, but if they were divorced. In other words, they were divorced from being fully married. But if they were divorced just from a betrothal, he can go pay her back, because he's not so comfortable with her that they would end up sinning together. There was a fellow and his fiance. Dasalakami the Rava. Yosef Ravada Bar Masna Kame. Ravada Bar Masna was sitting there. Uki Rava Shluchim Ben Tayo. And Rava set up a shliach to make the transaction go between one and the other. That there was a messenger there, they shouldn't interact between each other. Amalei Ravada Bar Masna Amrav Nachman Tanabe Rabasi Hulu was taught in Evel Rabasi. That's only if they were divorced from a marriage, not from Erisin, not from betrothal. So I see that they're comfortable with each other. They had like a sign language that they were comfortable with each other. So Rava thought it wasn't appropriate. So Ikadamri, some said this differently. Lo yuki Rava shliach ben tayo, that Rava did not put a messenger between them. Amalei Ravada Bar Masna Nekamar Shluchim ben tayo. Ravada Bar Masna says, why don't you put a messenger between them? They shouldn't interact, like an interpreter or someone that would hand things from one to the other. Amalei V'amrav Nachman Tanabev Rabasi. But it says that it was only from if they were divorced from a marriage, they're only betrothed. Rav is saying, Amalei Hanimilech like Dadi. So Ravada Bar Masna, that's only if they're not comfortable with each other. Aval Hani, kachazinu lo degaisi badadi. But these, you can see that they're comfortable with each other, the way they're communicating. Okay. New Mishnah.
We have a couple, be separated like that, and the lawyer has to go between them. This one in my office, this one in that office.
Yeah, that's a different problem. That's yeah, that's a different problem. We had to do a get once in the courthouse. There was no trust at all in anything. They thought that if the divorce doesn't go through, they didn't want to give the get and the thing. We had to go into the courtroom and back outside into one of the offices on the side. And she was here and he was there, and did he say, okay, you can hand it over now? It was crazy. No, it was in the it was in the court. Yeah, it was downtown. It was in the courthouse. Went with the Dayanim from the Besdin to be there.
It's nothing to do with civil.
No, he refused to give her the get unless he agreed to certain conditions that he was going to sign on on divorce. So yeah, it was totally separate when we were going back and forth, like running. Is it done? Is it this? Can we? Okay. Reb Naftali, this Mishnah is going to be your comment. The following things a person can testify when he's an adult of things that he witnessed when he was a child. Person is allowed to say, he's trusted to say that this is my father's handwriting. This is my teacher's handwriting. This is my brother's handwriting. I remember how do they translate that? I was reminded. I was reminded about this woman that she went out with a hinuma. Remember what hinuma was? It was a type of veil or a crown that only a virgin would have at their wedding. She's saying now that she's getting divorced, there is something, the husband passed away, she wants a ksuba from the estate, that she should get the double ksuba, the 200s.
We don't do that, of course. Crown.
Well, yeah, we do. We use a veil.
Oh.
And the veil is only for a first marriage.
Oh, is that?
Officially, the second marriage, there's no veil.
Nowadays,
I think
we
they
just
do.
assume-
I think the Kala likes the veil even at a second
Right.
marriage.
We just
but,
assume now that
the
first
document-
marriage, it's always a veil. We just
Right.
assume whether or
Right.
not she is or she's
Right.
not.
Right. 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 Reisha Prua, and also her hair was undone. That meant that she wasn't married yet. And also testifying that there was a certain person that would left school. They took him out of school. They took him to the mikveh and they served him lunch on the truma table. And and he would actually come and collect his truma by the threshing floor. The person can also testify that this area had a grave in it once and it got plowed over, and therefore Kayanim should not walk through this area. But and until here is as far as we're allowed to walk on Shabbos. But you can't say, one person can't testify when he's an adult that so and so had a path through the other person's property, and he owns part of his property. One witness, and he's testifying on what he saw as a child. I'm not sure which one is the bigger problem. And or someone had an area here outside a cemetery on someone else's property that he could use that area for the maimad, for the place of a eulogy, or a place of where they would sit down, or they would stand, they would stop. In other words, that someone owned a certain part of this property. Can't testify about that. Well, Amar Rav Huna Breder Rav Yeshua Ushiesh Gadolimai. Why is he believed to do these testimonies? It's because there is another witness there as well. Now, if we're not trusting one witness about a signature, how do you be Makayim Ashtar? How do you certify a document? You need two witnesses. So if you need two witnesses. So this one person is saying, I remember the handwriting from a child. And the other one, it says, I know the handwriting from as an adult. And we're trusting the other one, even though he said he only knows it as a child. Utricha. Now we need all the cases that we discussed, because the Yashmin enough if it would say he remembers his father because Mishum Deshchiach Kaben, because he would always see his father's handwriting. Aval Rabbi Loi, but his teacher he didn't always see. Yashmin and Rabbi Mishum Dislayim said the Rabbi. And if he would say his teacher, that's because, well, the teacher, was in fear of the teacher. He had a stick, made sure that he studied. He would have to copy, notes or whatever. So that's why he remembers. Aval Aviv Loi, but he doesn't remember from his father. Yashmin and Itarti would say both father and teacher. Aviv Deshchiach Gabe Rabbi Dislayim say Aval Achiv Delesle Loi Ha V'Loi Ha Imalai. What about his brother? To say that he remembers his brother's handwriting, he doesn't always hanging around his brother. He didn't have fear of his brother, usually. So Kamash Malan is coming to teach us that he's allowed to testify about his brother's handwriting also. Even the Kiyam Shtaris term Midrabanan, Imnur Rabbanan B'Dirabanan. Since when a document comes to court, we consider it already verified, just the fact that it has two signatures. We consider that it's valid. We don't say automatically that it's not valid until you prove that it is valid. We say that it is valid. However, the rabbis were more careful about this, and they said that you should verify. Kiyum Shtaris is all midrabanan. It's based on a statement of Rish Lakish that that if witnesses on the document, it's as if the witnesses appeared themselves in court. Okay. Zachar, you see, I was reminded, but my timer. Why do we trust him over here? It says, given the Rav Nashim Besulsness says, since most women, when they get married, they're virgins, so we really don't need his testimony anyway. But he's just saying that she was one of the majority. Yeah, we need a strong logic besides for his testimony. And so-and-so was taken out of school and put into the mikveh to eat truma. That must mean he's a kohen. The Gemara says the dilma eved kohen. How do you know he's a kohen? Maybe he's the slave of a kohen, and the slaves of a kohen also eat truma. So Messiah Rabbi Shua ben Levi. This is proving what Rabbi Shua ben Levi said. Rabbi Shua ben Levi person is not allowed to teach his servant Torah. So the emphasis here that he was taken out of the Beis HaSefer was that he was studying Torah. And that's why it can't be that he was a slave. A slave can't study Torah. But Tanya, we have a brisa. Loving men a rabbi, shas a rabbi, apotropos, rabbi. If the master borrowed money from him, or the master made him a apotropos, he put his possessions into this person's hand, that he should go and do business with them, or he put tefillin on in front of his master. A slave doesn't wear tefillin. Or he read 3 verses in shul. This does not mean that the master had freedom. Now, the problem over here is we see that there's slaves that are studying Torah. This one just read 3 verses. So it's Hasim de Ikri Eved Midaitai. Over there, he was reading on his own. We were talking about over here where he was being sent to school, to cheder. That's a different story. Yeah, but Kanani. It's a Shivcha Kananis. Yeah. Doesn't have to be, right? Certain in the cases before where a private shivcha liba gaspa, it wouldn't have to be a shivcha knanis. The issue over there was that she wouldn't say anything. Okay. B'truma, litzvah lechel b'truma, went to the mikveh to eat truma. B'truma derabanan. It's talking about truma derabanan, and that's why we're being lenient that he can testify when he was a child, that what was happened to as a child. How do you know that he's a kayan just because we would distribute truma to him at the threshing floor? Maybe he was a slave. It says Tanan, Commander Amar. Our mission is following the opinion that says Ein cholkin truma le'eved elam kin rabima, that you're not allowed to distribute truma to the slave unless the master is there. The Tanya was taught in a brisa. Ein cholkin truma le'eved elam kin rabima. Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that you're not allowed to do that. We're going to say in a minute. Rabbi Yehuda holds that if you do distribute truma to him, then that's going to be enough of a proof that he's going to be able to get married as a kayan. However, Rabbi Yossi Yachalu Sheyemar Im kayan ani tinuli b'shvil atzmi v'meved kayan ani tinuli b'shvil Rabbi. Rabbi Yossi says no. You can give him truma by the threshing floor, according to Rabbi Yossi. He says, look, if I'm a kayan, so I deserve it, and if I'm a slave, so my master's a kayan. Give it to me because of that. So the Gemara explains, in the place of Rabbi Yehuda in that area, so if anyone received truma, that meant that he was a kayan. They would take him. They would trust that fact that he was able to receive the truma distribution, that he was a kayan for yuchsin as well. So therefore, they couldn't distribute to a slave. They would do the investigations before he got the truma. However, in the area of Rabbi Yossi, they would not take him from truma to yuchsin. They would do the investigations. Even if he had truma, they would still investigate. Maybe he should not be getting married as a kayan. Tanya was taught in a brisa, I never testified anything. Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yossi says, this is Rabbi Yossi's son. He's the one that went with Reb Shimon Bar Yochai to Rome, and was an important person. One time I testified. And when I testified, a slave became a kayan because of my testimony. I guess that's why he stopped. Well, Helus al Kadaita, did it really happen? It says 1 second. Even an animal of a tzaddik, Shem doesn't and it doesn't end up eating untithed grain. The donkey of Pinchas ben Yair refused to eat. Tzaddikim atzman like kolshkein. A tzaddik, a mistake is going to happen to a tzaddik that is going to end up making a slave into a kayan. They wanted to, didn't actually happen. He saw in the that this person was taking truma, but it was in the territory of Rabbi Yossi, who holds that that's not a proof, the fact that he's getting truma. But then when it came to the testifying about him, and he testified in the place of Rabbi Yehuda that fellow received truma. This fellow is now becoming a kayan in Rabbi Yehuda's territory. Rabbi Yehuda holds that the only way he could get truma was if the investigations about his lineage were already done. In the land of Rabbi Yossi, he would get truma without those investigations. So that's what happened. Then he goes over to Yehuda and he says, well, he got truma.
Is there an overlay for all these, that there's an additional witness?
That's what it seemed like from the first Rav Huna Breder Rabbi Shua. Oh,
Didn't we have this exact passage before?
1 second. You're right. Taisvus over here, V'sheish Gadol discusses that it's not referring to truma either. You only need one person for that. Yeah, and by the shvuya, that should be good. But did we have a shvuya? No, we didn't have a shvuya in there. But you're right. That anyone that in the case of one person, it should be acceptable. Reb Daniel, what are you saying?
Oh, didn't we have this exact exchange before? earlier. This is Gemara?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. What daf was it? We had it in Yavamas. Sadik
Oh,
Tes.
okay.
You remember it from 7 years ago. Yeah. Okay. It must have been 2 months ago, approximately. Shamakam is a Besa Prasu, that this area was a Besa Pras. Besa Pras means that there's several types of Besa Pras. One is that there's a grave that we don't know where it is. Another one is that there was a grave that got plowed over. The plow went over the grave. We think that there's bones spread out everywhere. So how big are those bones? Enough that could cause tumah, but it's really only this is only all considered a midrabanan. My timer. What's the reason why this person can say that this area is a beis pras? Sounds like he's being strict. My time beis pras derabanan. It's all rabbinic. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Shmuel that a person can actually blow his way through a beis pras. That means he blows on the ground, on the soil, and it checks to see if he's uncovering any bones. And
Across the cemetery.
it's not a cemetery. It's a place that had a grave in it.
Ah.
The cemetery itself would be kainim are not allowed in.
Mhm.
Here we're talking about that there was a grave here, which we thought we knew where it was marked off, but it got plowed over. Now we think the bones spread everywhere. So
I mean, I've seen Quantum go to the OL or something. Was it because it's fenced or something?
yeah, because of the fence.
It's a
They blow the leaves. He's blowing with his mouth, maybe with like a tube, probably. Rabbi Yehuda Barami Mishmei Rav Yehuda Amar Beisa Prasha Nidash tar. Once it's been trampled upon as tar, my time, why is it tar? It's impossible that those little tiny bones that we're worried about were not already crushed. And if those bones were crushed, then it won't give off any tumah. It needs to be the size of a barley to make tumah with touching, and it needs to be a bone. Gidin batzamis, I think it needs to have the sinews and the flesh attached to give off tumah ba'ayil. Yeah. Okay. But and until here we would travel on Shabbos. In other words, we're dealing with the tchum here. How far outside the city were they allowed to go? So tchumen derabanan. This is because tchumen is only rabbinic. It's big machlokes. But anyway, that's what the Babli holds. That tchumen is derabanan. A person can't testify when he's older that when I was younger, I remember that someone owned a certain part of this field. My time, he can't extract money based on that testimony that he remembered when he was younger. Person is trusted to say that my father told me that this family is pure, this family is impure. Pure and impure, that's what you think we're talking about. This family is pure lineage, and this was not pure lineage. And that we ate from kitzatza. You have to wait till the end of the Gemara. We'll say what that is. But it sounds like it's is it the dates of some sort, or dried figs or something? We'll see. We'll see what the story was. It's a certain type of kiddush that they went to. Not on Shabbos though. It's a kiddush. We'll see. Shall bas pliny lepliny. He's able to. He was trusted to say that so and so married so and so. This woman married so. And I would bring challah and gifts to this kohen on my own. My father would send me. But not through someone else. That he wouldn't be believed. If he himself went, that would be. Let's say it was a non-Jew, or it was a slave that got freed. And he says, I remember before I converted, or I remember before I was freed, such and such. He's not believed. Now, also, a person can't say that someone else owned a piece of this field. There was a path in this field that was owned by someone else, or that there was an area here that was used for the eulogies that would belong to someone. He's not trusted to say that. Rabbi Yochanan ben Breka says he is trusted. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yochanan ben Breka, hey, what is he talking about? Which case? We had like 6 cases over here. Which one does he say trusted? Ilay ma seifa. If we're talking about the last case, a seifa fukim amaino can't be. Can't extract money just from a testimony that he has as a child, that he remembered as a child. Ella Aresha must be talking about the earlier case. What was the earlier case? Said that if a person converted, it's not trusted to say what he remembered before he converted, or if he was a slave, it's not trusted to say what he remembered before he redeemed. Rabbi Yochanan ben Breka says, no, he is trusted to say. What's the machlekes? Why does one say yes, one say no? Tanakama the Tanakama says it's not that we don't trust him. We trust him. We just think that when he wasn't, before he was Jewish, he wasn't so careful with what he saw. He let it settle into his mind as if this was the facts. And now afterwards he's testifying. So he's testifying exactly what he remembers, but we don't think that before he analyzed it properly. Rabbi Yochanan ben Breka says, no, since he already knew beforehand that he wanted to convert, so he was very careful. The Gemara says, my ktsatsa, what was that thing that a person could testify that we ate from a ktsatsa? Taner Rabbana was taught in the Brisa, ktsatsa, what is that story of a ktsatsa? Do they translate ktsatsa?
It's some sort of ceremony
Okay.
that they have when someone marries like an unfit.
Yeah, we'll see. If there was one of the brothers that married a woman that wasn't fit means that her lineage was not perfect. There was a problem there with the lineage. Well, so the family, siblings, they come along and they say, they take a barrel full of fruit, they break it on the street, and they say, Achina Beis Yisrael Shimu, everyone come and listen. Our brothers, Achina Plainus Nasa Isha Sheina Against Hashem Yisar V'Zari B'Zarenu. Our brother, so and so, married a woman that's not fit to be married. There's a problem with her lineage, and we're afraid that people are going to mix us up. Take a sample over here. Should know for all generations. The food over here is just for the attraction. And this is the ktsatsa that the child is allowed to testify that the rest of the family is pure. There was only that one brother that had that issue. Okay,
so this lineage is what? She's a ger or
Good day, everyone.